Hello everyone, my name is Gerard Furi, and today I would like to answer a FAQ, which is, can psychedelics actually help us attain a permanent state of enlightenment or awakening? I think the answer absolutely is yes, but I will explain why, of course. Before I explain that, however, I do very clearly want to say that some psychedelics are much better than others. And I made a video in the past, I should probably update that list now, creating a little tier list of psychedelics. But some, like 5-MeO-DMT and 5-MeO-MALT, they are very no-nonsense. They get straight to the point of spirituality, straight to the point of enlightenment, and straight to the point of awakening. So those psychedelics, I think, are better and more well-suited to those interested in deep awakenings than more generic psychedelics, perhaps like LSD, although LSD still can be very useful when used with the proper intentions. That brings me to the second point, however, which is that psychedelics, like I said, I believe they can actually help us attain enlightenment, permanent enlightenment, not just a peek at it, not just a temporary enlightenment. But psychedelics, they do need to be used responsibly with the right intentions, and they should be treated as being a sacred thing, not as toys. Of course, taking LSD at a music festival, that could be fun, but it's not going to deliver a permanent state of enlightenment, almost certainly. I am quite sure of that. But if you use it in combination with a spiritual practice, then, wow, then it can be very effective. But now that I've covered those introductory aspects, I want to give three undeniable ways in which a psychedelic can help you or me attain a permanent state of awakening. So I've got a little list. Number one is it can really remove all doubt that there is such a thing as enlightenment and such a thing as spirituality even. So the reason I mention this is, well, firstly, I think it's the most valuable thing psychedelics can bring to the world. There's a lot of people that exist that are genuinely great people, but they have doubts about spirituality, and in general, I highly encourage skepticism and rational thinking, you could say. If we all believed everything we heard, we would get sucked into a religion, or not even a religion, we would get sucked into cults of all kinds. So it's very good that we are skeptical, but there's a lot of Westerners especially that just doubt this whole spirituality thing, doubt the existence of God, and doubt enlightenment. What's the point of pursuing enlightenment if it doesn't even exist? So if you slowly ramp up, do it responsibly, but if you take a nice dose of 5-MeO-DMT, it's not, the whole world isn't magically going to fall into place, but what will happen is it will become completely undeniable that spirituality is real. There's a substance to it. Spirituality is not just a hippie woo-woo topic. There's a very extremely huge depth to it. A depth that is so awe-inspiring that can bring tears. Really amazing stuff. So that one experience, if someone has one psychedelic experience, this is very common, one DMT trip, and people can suddenly know instantly, and for the rest of their lives they know spirituality is for real. So that's the first thing, a huge benefit of psychedelics. I think this is alone can offer so much to the world. The second thing on my list is that I believe psychedelics can be very powerful in kenosis. So kenosis, I believe that's a Greek word. It's a Christian term. But it's interesting, in India, they have a different word for it called kriya. And I was just talking to a nice person yesterday also about the concept of mu, which is more Japanese related, but similar. All of these concepts involve an emptying out or a purifying of your nervous system. So this is incredibly important because if we want to attain a permanent state of enlightenment, a permanent state of awakening, it is it's a big consensus in all the spiritual traditions that if we want to know God on a daily level, reach a permanent state of Buddhahood, then what needs to happen is purification, kriya, kenosis, emptying ourselves, giving up all our selfishness, giving up all our negative karmas, getting over it, transcending. And this is a big process. But that's really what a lot of spirituality is about. It is removing these karmic blockages, these energetic blockages that we have, such as you could say the 7 deadly sins. I don't know them off by heart, but things like laziness or jealousy or hatred, all these things that the human being has within us because we inherited it from our society, and ultimately we are just slightly evolved chimpanzees, we're slightly evolved apes, so we have a lot of animalistic energies in us. And through this process of kenosis, that is how we attain these permanent states of Buddhahood. Now, see for yourself, of course, but I would suggest 5-MeO-DMT in particular and 5-MeO-MALT as well. That's my favorite psychedelic actually, for purification. When you take these substances, the amount of white light and Christ-like energy that you can experience is really beyond words. And the aspect of purification is totally undeniable. There is, to me, in my experience, there's karmic blockages and energy clumps within me that I didn't even know I had. And a psychedelic experience not only shows you that, but it washes it away like a waterfall. It can be like standing under a waterfall and just being washed clean of all this tar and dirt. And the feelings that you get with that are liberation. These are very, very, very common experiences that people have with spirituality. One reason why in Christianity angels are depicted with wings is because there's this huge sense of lightness. There's no karma bogging you down, causing suffering just by existing. Most of us, if we were just to sit in a room doing nothing for an hour, that would actually involve a lot of suffering. People don't like just sitting in a room. But when we have a lot of kenosis, purification that happens, when you sit in a room with nothing happening, you don't even get bored. You just bliss out. You're just a Buddha, just totally blissed out because you're in contact with God. There's this lightness like the wings of an angel. So even in general Christian, Orthodox Christianity, these same symbols that people are striving for can be contacted through a psychedelic. And it should not be understated as well. This process of purification, it is quite a lengthy process. It's a long process. It's not done in a single experience. Usually, people have varying degrees of inner karma or some skaras. But generally, the metaphor I have is it's like going to the beach and you're trying to clear a whole beach of seaweed. And there's a lot of seaweed on the beach. So what is needed is a daily practice. We need to be performing purification through our daily life. And that's what really all the spiritual traditions are about. And what exact techniques you can do? Well, there's many, many techniques. You can practice standard meditation. You can use mantras. You can contemplate Christ. But it can be a huge help, a psychedelic, with this purification process. And it can be especially a huge help at clearing deep-seated karma, which is hard for us to access with our just normal state of meditation. So that second point I went on for quite a long time, but that is really the core of how psychedelic can help someone in the long term, a long-term psychedelic user. So number 3 is psychedelics can very much open the doors of perception. And what I mean by this is there's multiple aspects to reality. There's the logical aspect and there's the emotional aspect, for instance. Then there's also the bodily level aspect. But there's actually thousands of dimensions to life. maybe endless dimensions to life. And by taking a psychedelic, we become open to those dimensions. So I'm not sure who you are watching this video and how much knowledge you have of spirituality, but for instance, one thing that can be opened to you as a door of perception is non-duality. This big concept that you do not exist as a self, that the self, who you are, is an illusion, and if you actually really remember who you are not a human being at all. It's something else. So, to some people that might seem a bit crazy, but this is very unanimous amongst spiritual traditions. And if you take a psychedelic, again, this will become very abundant to you, very abundantly clear to you. And not only will you see it, as I'm saying, it opens a door of perception or a window of perception. And when the psychedelic experience is over, it might not be that vividly clear to you. You might fall back into a duality, but you will always remember and be still able to access some level of this non-duality. But non-duality, that was just one example. There's many other doors of perception that can open, such as the fact that God exists, or how much love is actually in the universe, or it can show you how you want to live your whole life from love, or it can open a door of perception so simple as wanting to forgive people that hurt you in the past. All of these doors of perception, though, in my experience, if we're doing them in a responsible way, in a meditative way, and in the next coming days and weeks, we reflect and integrate the psychedelic experience, then these doors that open in our perception, we can return to them and permanently see through them. So it literally expands our awareness to much, much greater dimensions of life. So those are the three undeniable aspects. I think we could have a bigger conversation if we wanted to. Someone could write a whole book on this topic. And I can think of at least a fourth benefit involving the Kundalini. But I don't think I should go promoting Kundalini states of pursuit too much. I made a video about that topic earlier, much earlier on this YouTube channel. And, we should just be responsible about the Kundalini energy. That is a topic that requires care and sensitivity when talking about it. So, those are the three undeniable aspects that make me just generally recommend it to almost anyone. I say almost because, first of all, you need to use it responsibly with the right intentions. And it needs to be someone that's not just going to be using psychedelics frivolously. Also, if someone has has a genuine mental illness like schizophrenia, then again, I would not recommend they use psychedelics. But to the average person that's going through life and has a job, a psychedelic can really wake you up to God. It can wake you up to enlightenment. And that will be very, very valuable. It can certainly help in your purification, your kenosis, your emptying out, and it can open all sorts of doors of perception that help us attain enlightenment and also make our life much more rich, and we become more capable, effective beings. So, I did mention this earlier a little bit, but I do very much want to clarify in my mind. Psychedelics can be useful towards enlightenment, but it requires a daily meditation practice. This meditation can be all sorts of techniques, but we need to engage with spirituality on a daily level. Only taking psychedelics, I don't think, is going to lead to a permanent state of enlightenment. It's true, though, that if you practice spirituality every day, it can be hard to make big progress. So if you take psychedelic use and a daily meditation, that is when you can really move forward, full steam ahead. I also want to say, as I'm wrapping this topic up, that taking psychedelics is not the ultimate. The ultimate is, after this kenosis experience has culminated, is to live in the grace of God all the time, and simply by closing our eyes and focusing on God, we can enter states of enlightenment, states of Buddhahood, and even the ultimate is for us to walk through life from a state of Buddhahood. That's the ultimate, and we're using psychedelics to get there. I also want to say that there's literally, or almost no downside to taking a psychedelic, especially, as I mentioned at the start, if you use the best psychedelics, which in my opinion are 5-MeO-DMT and 5-MeO-MALT. Of course, after you take it, it takes the brain, because it is a chemical, you can feel a bit sluggish for a few hours afterwards, and you shouldn't drive for a few hours after you take the psychedelic. But those are tiny downsides. There's no psychological downsides. In my experience, it's all positive if we're doing things responsibly. There's no health effects that are negative if you're using a proper route of administration. I've made videos about that in the past as well. If we do things properly, there's literally almost no downsides at all. So why wouldn't we use this to discover enlightenment, to open the doors of perception and help with the deep process of kenosis? Now, the last thing on my list that I want to say is I think there's this very big general misconception that psychedelics are not holy. And a large reason for that is the average psychedelic user, when we look at the whole of society, is someone that does it for fun and, perhaps doesn't act in the most proper or formal of ways. I'm talking about classic hippies here that go to bush doofs, and sometimes they get in trouble and it seems a bit weird and embarrassing. Sometimes they don't wear good clothes, sometimes they don't the girls don't shave their armpits. So generally people just see that and think that, okay, psychedelics are just weird experiences that happen, but they assume that there isn't a real depth to psychedelics. Now, obviously, what I think is those particular people are not using psychedelics in the most focused and most sacred of ways. But if you use a psychedelic in a sacred way, that is where it's at. This is the misconception I want to clear up. Psychedelics are not a cheat code, they are a tool. If you want to dig a hole in your backyard because you want to plant a fruit tree, are you going to go to your backyard and dig a hole with your bare hands? I think most people will not. They're going to go and get a shovel. And it's very similar with a psychedelic. A psychedelic is a wonderful shovel.